All right. Welcome to Hoops in the Pacific Northwest. This is episode 3, and we're going to venture across the mountains here to Eastern Washington. And we have with us today somebody that I haven't, he's actually come to speak at our clinic here over in Lake Stevens, if I remember back 2014,
Correct.
if I remember that correctly.
Yeah.
And I'm going to actually have you, I was thinking about this last night. I'm going to actually have you speak to your passing focus. For a couple of different reasons, but we'll get to that. But Coach Mike Arte from Gonzaga Prep High School, one of our longest tenured girls basketball coaches, is approaching that 500 win mark, which is just amazing to think about. We certainly don't want to try to date him by any stretch of the imagination, as we were talking about before here. But it's just an impressive feat. And when we think about the game today and coaches and the challenges that we face, to find somebody that's been doing it, and particularly at, for the most part, one location, we need to find out more, and that's why we have Coach Arte on with us today. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This is great. I love talking basketball, and especially not just the X's and O's of basketball, but just talking about just why we're coaches and all the things that go with coaching. So
Love it, love it. And that's kind of been our big focus, is the why. Ultimately,
yeah,
how can we use the game as a facilitator to the why, and why we want to, influence and impact young people. And um,
fantastic.
yeah, that's certainly what we're after. So we talked a little bit before we got started, a little bit of your history. Give us some background, coaching background, as you're going to speak, obviously at Gonzaga Prep and what have you. And for that matter, were you a player back then too? So if you want to give us a little bit of Gonzaga Prep and Coach Arte historical background, let's hear it. Go ahead.
Well, starting, I played 3 sports in high school. That's fairly rare, but back in the 70s, it wasn't so rare.
Hmm.
Especially, I came from a farm town in southern Idaho, and it seemed like all the boys played 3 sports.
Yes.
So um, I played basketball all 4 years in high school. I played baseball. Baseball was probably my better sport. And I played football for 3 of the 4 years because I got injured. I broke my collarbone and didn't
Uh-huh.
get to play one year.
Sure.
But so I was in, it was kind of an outlet for me. I grew up on a dairy farm. Um, I did a lot of chores in the morning, and then our dad allowed us boys to play sports in the afternoon, and he did the chores in the afternoon. And so
Okay.
it was kind of an outlet for me as we grew up in southern Idaho there. I attended Boise State University. I graduated from Boise State in 1981. And then I got my first teaching job in northern Idaho at Kellogg High School. And I was hired there as a junior high civics teacher.
Nice.
And my coaching responsibilities while I was at Kellogg, I was a 7th grade boys coach. And they did the 7th grade season, started around the 1st of October, and it went to the end of November.
Uh-huh.
It was like a 2-month season. And so I coached that. And then that kind of also, they overlapped by a couple of weeks, but I was also the JV boys coach at the high school there. And so, and I was telling you before we got on the air that my wife and I had just got married in 1981 when we moved
Right.
up to Kellogg. And I don't know if too many people know the history of Kellogg as far as the industry there, but it used to have a huge smelter in town.
Yep.
Hecla Mining had a huge Bunker Hill, it was called, smelter there.
Yes.
And my wife and I actually moved to Kellogg, and I think the actual date was August 4th. We moved to Kellogg. We had an apartment there. And then 2 days later, on August 6th, Bunker Hill announced that the smelter was shutting down. And
Uh,
that employed probably 70% of the people
right.
in
Yeah.
Kellogg.
That's how that works with small towns. You usually
Yeah,
have one big place.
exactly. One
Yeah.
so both years I was there, we were losing families out of the valley, which meant we were losing kids from the schools.
Right.
And I was actually laid off or reduction in force both years in 1982 and 1983. And I decided in 83, because I had been hired back in 82 because of some circumstances. But in 83, I just decided to start looking for jobs elsewhere
Sure.
because I really couldn't go through that. Even though I loved Kellogg, Idaho, it was a great place.
Right.
I was started looking for jobs, and I was fortunate enough to get a job at Gonzaga Prep in 1983, and I've been there ever since. I started out as boys JV coach there,
Uh-huh.
and I was a boys JV coach for 5 years. I also coached freshman baseball for a number of years. And in 1988, I was fortunate enough to get the girls varsity job, and I've been the coach there, the varsity girls coach since 1988. So this will be my 33rd straight year of
Man.
coaching girls varsity. And I looked it up because Dad was asking for records, and I really didn't know my record, and so I had to go look it up.
Right.
I've coached over 720 games
Yes.
at
Yeah.
Gonzaga Prep. And so that in itself astounded me a little bit when I saw that total was that high. So
When did you stop keeping track?
I don't think I ever kept track of my
Right.
record.
Yeah, for
Uh,
sure.
it's one of those things that, you know, I probably, I don't know, this would be something I'd have to go back and look, but I've been fortunate enough. We get really good kids at Gonzaga Prep,
Yep.
and not just athletically, but we get really good academic kids at
Right.
Gonzaga Prep. We're a
Right.
fairly small school. We only have 800 kids in 4 grades, but we're a
Okay.
4A school.
Sure.
And so I've only had a couple of what I would consider losing seasons where my record was below 500.
Right.
So I never knew my actual record, but it was kind of interesting to see that I had coached over 700 games, and
Yeah.
it kind of astounded me when I added them up. So
It's awesome. Like I right before I came on, I wanted to do some math because I knew you were close to 500, but I hadn't put those tens and ones digits together, and it's remarkable. I mean, if you think about girls coaches, and I know we're probably not the most accurate or maybe caught up as much as we like. We're pretty close, I think, but that's just such an astounding number, and I think speaks to obviously your circumstances and situation there for being at one place for such a long time, which we'll get to here in a little bit. But just such a really impressive thing, and for that matter, you know, has there been the itch to go somewhere else? It just seems like you found a place that you've really enjoyed and loved, and 1988. Just to think about that from a teaching any profession to be at a place for that long. You've spoke to a little bit, but there's not been an itch to get anywhere else.
no, not really. I mean, Spokane's a great place to raise your kids.
Yep.
You could, probably attest to that for having relatives over here.
Yes.
It's a great place to raise our kids. Uh, Teaching at Gonzaga Prep, it has just been a blessing for me in the fact that it fits my personality, it fits my uh, ideas that I believe about education, and it fits all the things that I like and why I got to be a teacher and a
Right.
coach.
Right.
And so I really never have even looked anywhere else. And I've been fortunate enough to have them have me do coaching for 32
Sure.
years. And I've been pretty fortunate in the fact that I've got to have great experiences with kids and families. And probably, the one thing I think that keeps me around Gonzaga Prep, and that I've never had the interest to look elsewhere, is because there's such a buy-in by our community,
Mm-hmm.
and that our moms, our dads, our alumni, there's such a buy-in to what we do and the mission of our school.
Right.
It makes it really, I don't know if a lot of people can say this, but it is an easy place to teach
Awesome.
because you get great support from your parents, you get great support from the students themselves. They are usually all high academic kids, and they want to
Right.
be there, and there's a reason why they want to be there.
Right.
And the spiritual aspect of it is just another part of it. And so all of that just kind of fits me,
Yeah.
and it fuels my passion for teaching. I don't know if you know this, but for 15 years I was an administrator.
Uh-huh.
I was the athletic director at Gonzaga Prep for 9 years. Well, prior to that, I was dean of students for 1 year.
Okay.
Now, let me tell you about. I think every teacher should have to be dean of students.
All right, let's hear it. I'm interested because one of my assistant coaches. I don't know if you know Gil McKinney.
I know
Gil
that name.
McKinney.
Yes.
Gil McKinney. Steve Berg. Steve Berg was a longtime coach at Lake Stevens for 20. I want to say 28 years, 25 at least. And Gil's been his assistant forever. They're both volunteers on my staff now. and have been for several years. And so Gil was a dean of students. So I'm interested to hear your perspective here. Go ahead.
As a classroom teacher, I think every teacher should have to experience being dean of students, because I think it puts a whole new perspective on how you manage your class.
Okay.
And I've gotten to a point where almost I very rarely send a student to the dean.
Sure.
I handle it myself,
Sure.
because I think it creates a better relationship between teacher and student
Right.
if you handle it yourself rather than pushing that problem off to a dean. Now, obviously, if it's serious and you have to
Sure.
send, and it's some kind of rule that's been broken, that it's has to go to the dean and go to the. But I think it's so important that face-to-face
Yep.
discipline that you do with kids
Yeah.
is they respect it, and I
Yep.
think they'll be a better kid in your class because of that, and they'll respect you better. So so
Do you think, sorry to cut in here. Do you think, with that kid, if you're bridging that, one-on-one, that might surprise the kid. Like you didn't take it to that next level to the administrator level. Like,
yeah,
so then that respect maybe doubles itself, maybe you double down like, oh my goodness. Wow.
I get it. I get a lot of kids who thank me for that.
Awesome.
That I didn't send them to the dean for being tardy, or I
Sure.
didn't send them to the dean for the third time where they got caught chewing gum in class.
Uh-huh.
And so those types of things I think you can deal with on a personal matter
Right.
way, and the kids actually really respect that, and I always get a lot of comments about that. And so um, but and then I was athletic director for 9 years at Gonzaga Prep.
Right.
All the while I was coaching.
Sure.
And then I got persuaded to become the academic vice principal
Okay.
at Gonzaga Prep, and I was the academic vice principal for 5 years. So for 15 years, I was an administrator at Gonzaga
Uh-huh.
Prep. And then in 2009, I made the personal choice to go back into the classroom, because that's what I love the best, is being in front of kids and teaching kids. And
Yep.
I teach math,
Yeah.
and I love the fact that I know what my day is going to be like. I know what I'm going to be teaching, as opposed to an administrator. When you go to work, you're
Sure.
not sure what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that I can be in front of kids and I can have that classroom relationship with kids. So in 2009, my wife didn't agree with it because I took a huge pay cut. But in 2009, I went back into the classroom, and
Right.
I've been in the classroom ever since. So
Love it. Well, it's interesting because, you think that consistency piece, that makes so much sense in terms of just that routine. I teach modern world history at Lake Stevens High School, and it's the only class I teach. So 5 sections of that each day. And people are like, man,
uh,
don't you get sick of that, and what have you? But it's the expectation. I know what I'm getting myself into each and every day. Now, granted, my jokes aren't going to be necessarily as funny the 4th or 5th time that I say them, throughout the day. But I appreciate just, and then especially getting in coach. I coach in the fall and winter, of course. There's just that, I like what I know I'm getting myself into. So you make a great and interesting point there. I like that
well, the other thing
perspective.
about it for me is, and I think maybe most coaches are. I might be wrong about this, but I'm a real Type A personality,
Sure.
and I plan everything,
Sure.
and that includes practices. I mean, we
Hmm.
in our practices, and we're always fortunate enough to have a couple of nice managers. But in our practices, everything's timed out
Yep.
and the clock's running,
Right.
and we move from one thing to the next, whether we're finished with it or not. And I just think it creates more efficiency. And I think the girls, when they understand that planning, they understand that we're not going to spend too much time on any one particular
Right.
concept of the game.
Right.
We're going to move on and maybe come back to it tomorrow if we need to come back to it.
Sure. No, love it. Love it.
So I'm a consummate planner. I plan everything out.
Yeah. No, I think a lot of us are. I just struggle with any wasted time. I feel like,
Yeah, me too.
it's going to set us back, and you multiply, everybody does this. You multiply that out times your 50 practice days, and how much time have you lost? It could be quite a bit.
Yeah,
That same goes for school too,
yeah,
That's why administrators say, hey, bell to bell, you lose that minute every single day. How many, how
yeah.
much
But
now?
in class, it's hard to get them to focus for 45 minutes. So
For sure. No, for
especially
sure.
on math concepts.
Oh, no question.
It's interesting. If I was doing a science lab, it might be a different story. But
Yeah.
but
Now,
anyway, that's me. That's my personality, is to make sure that I know exactly what my day is going to look like, and I have very few
sure.
surprises. So.
Now, do you think your time as an administrator, or to kind of look at that reflection, as an administrator and now, as a teacher, do you think it helped you coaching? To have that other perspective, that other angle, did it change maybe how you approached your young ladies, maybe at practice or maybe in certain circumstances or situations?
I I'm not sure if it did that. I am sure that it made me realize the importance of the jobs that they do, and
Okay.
the kind of effects that they can have, those positions,
Sure.
vice principals positions, dean of students positions, those positions can have on students' lives.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
I really think that, one of the things we want to always do when we're dealing with kids is obviously we want to enforce things that we want to enforce, but we also want to show compassion for them,
Right. Yep.
and make sure that we are seeing them in a light that's not as a student but as a
Yep.
person.
Yep.
And I think, when you do those types of jobs and you get to see the outside the classroom lives of
Yes.
girls and
Yep.
kids,
Yep.
what their home lives are like and things like that, I think it only makes you more capable of dealing with them, and
Yeah.
it makes you closer to them.
Right.
And I really think that that rapport that you get dealing in those situations comes back to have positive things at the end. So.
Yeah, no question. I would certainly agree with that. I think what really helps too, and what I really look forward to, like in the fall and the spring, is seeing my players and students for that matter. I had a senior this year that I was really looking forward to in my sophomore class. She needed the credit or whatever, but she was a big time softball player and a wrestler. And I was really looking forward to go watching her play softball because, I just know her as a student, but she's such a great kid. And athletes, your athletes, kids that you have in class, they really appreciate
Hmm.
that value. Look at them in terms of outside of the classroom. There's so much leverage in that. It makes that, person to person thing so important that, maybe in class that helps raise their bar, and their effort level and their commitment to being academic and so on and so forth, because you cared about those outside periphery
Exactly.
things, so
I find myself, like, the girls that are softball players for me, I find myself looking in the box score in the paper in the morning to see
yes,
if they got a hit. And then when
sure,
they come into class, I say, "Hey,
sure,
got a hit yesterday. Good job."
yep,
Or the girl, I got one girl who's a really good golfer. Like, she'll shoot like a 78. She'll come into class, "Hey, nice job. Got a 78
sure,
yesterday." And they
yeah.
kind of look at you like, "How'd you know I got a 78?"
Yep, yep,
And I just, those things are so important when you're dealing with young ladies, that you care about
yep,
them other than basketball
yep,
players.
yep,
That's such an important thing, that you understand what's going on in their home life. You understand what's going on with them and their friends. You understand just everything outside of basketball that's going on with them.
right.
Uh, that's invaluable.
Yeah,
So.
no, I love it. Now you spoke to obviously at Gonzaga Prep. The other angle I was coming at is teaching and coaching, but coaching specifically at a private school. There's going to be some different challenges, I would imagine, expectations. You kind of spoke to support. What do you think the difference is? What are some things that maybe you deal with as a coach from a private school perspective that maybe we wouldn't necessarily have to deal with from a public school? Is there any differences there? Anything that you think maybe um, are there larger expectations? Are there, is there different challenges? Um, what kind of things do you think that maybe other coaches might not have to deal with that you would?
That's a tough question, because I've been at a private school almost my entire
Right.
career, and so, um, and then maybe my private school is different than other private schools. We're the only 4A private school
Right.
on this side of the state,
Right.
and so on this side of the Cascades. So I think it's different. Although we're not really a 4A school, we're a 2A school that
Right.
opts
Numbers
up.
wise. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, and there's obvious reasons for that. We play in the Greater Spokane League. If we actually played in our classification, we would be playing schools like Colville and
Right.
Pullman and Clarkston,
Right.
and our kids come from the radius of Spokane here. We actually have a lot of kids, probably about 15% of our population come from Idaho.
Oh, okay.
Coeur d'Alene's only 30 miles away,
Sure.
and we have and I've had several girls from Idaho. I had two last year on the team that were from Idaho,
Oh, okay.
and
Interesting.
um, so our kids live here in the Spokane metropolitan area, and we've done surveys with our parents about maybe becoming 2A, and our parents in our community and our alumni say no. I mean, we live here in Spokane. We want to compete against the Spokane schools,
Right.
even though, like Central Valley has more freshmen than we
Then you
have
guys, yeah.
kids.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
even though we compete against schools three times our size, we want to be a part of the Greater Spokane League because that's where our kids live. They love competing against, they might live across the street from a girl who plays at U High,
Right. Sure.
and they were grade school buddies, and
Sure.
they love competing against those schools. And so, but I don't know what the difference is. I do know that I get great support from parents. Again, there's that buy-in to our mission,
Right.
and that buy-in. I mean, our families pay a lot of money to
Yeah.
have their students go to a private school.
Sure.
And there's a purpose for that, because they want the type of education that we can provide, the
Right.
type of spirituality that we can provide,
Sure.
and type of opportunity that we can provide. We, you know, I, what's, what I'm most proud of for my program is every year we have 50 to 60 girls turn out.
That's awesome. That's a great number.
Um, because that's the mission of our school is to
Right.
for we talk about the whole person, the academics, the spiritual, but also the extracurricular activity part
Right.
of building the whole person, and in our mission statement. And it's important for our kids, and I'm not naive enough to know that not every girl is going to be a varsity basketball player,
Sure.
but we do need to provide opportunities for our students that just want to have fun
Yep.
and want to be a part of a team.
Yep.
And I think that's gotten lost over the last 20 years or so,
Sure.
that
Sure.
that it seems like everybody wants to funnel these girls or whatever, these athletes, to the varsity as fast as we can,
Yeah.
as opposed to what about those kids who want to play just for fun. I
Yeah.
had three girls on my C squad who literally, three seniors on my C squad
Oh.
that played C squad for 4 years, and
Ooh.
that they loved to play basketball. They just wanted to have fun. They weren't good at it, but they wanted to have fun. I think we lose as coaches because we're in such a competitive environment,
Yeah.
that we lose the fact that there's kids walking our hallways who just want to go out for a sport and have fun.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that's the thing I'm most proud of is, we have over 50 girls, and we have 400 girls in our school, half of
Right.
our student body. So
Right.
about one in every 8 girls plays basketball at our
Love it.
school.
Yeah.
And so, and we have those levels. We have a C squad level, and if we have enough freshmen turn out, we have a second freshman team, which we call a freshman B team.
Love it.
And those levels to me are levels where kids can just have fun.
Right.
We try and make it fun for them.
Right.
Whereas our freshman A team and our JV team are developmental levels where they are trying to develop into probably potentially becoming varsity players. But,
Sure.
that's what I've been around this since, the late 80s. And
Right.
the thing that bothers me the most is that kids at early ages, and I'm talking fourth, fifth, sixth grade, are getting weeded out
Yes. Yeah.
of playing because someone has told them that they're not going to be good enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the fact that they are playing, they want to just have fun, and they like to play basketball for fun, or they like to play tennis for fun, or they like to play volleyball for fun. Um, that's been lost, I think, in
Yeah.
up through the AAU mentality.
Yep.
That
For sure.
kids kids have been told as early as fourth grade that you're not going to be good enough.
Yeah.
And so they lose their passion for it. So
I just love the idea. Again, and I talked to you before we got started about kind of the selfish angle that I'm coming at this with, and how you mentioned you've got these teams that are just out there for girls to just go play. In fact, you had seniors on this team that for 4 years. Why or how couldn't we do something like that at any school for that matter if kids just wanted to play? Maybe there's no notion to play any games except at practice, where they're just
yeah,
they get some exercise in, they can play for 90 minutes. Can you make it a part of, that just seems like such a great outlet, to provide without the fear of getting cut. Basketball is traditionally a cut sport. And so
right,
that's usually the number one reason why kids don't turn out. They don't want to have to deal with that reality. Whereas if
correct.
it's, hey, you're going to be somewhere, come play, and man, I love thinking of, the possibilities with that. And especially with girls sports, you're trying to, encourage girls to compete and do as much as they possibly can. And as you spoke to kind of the multi-sport angle, we're always looking for multi-sport type of kids. And I think we got to take that anxiety and fear out of the equation of just wanting to play to have fun.
Yeah,
There's an outlet for that, I think. And so I love that.
exactly. Here in Spokane, there's a boys city rec league for high school. Boys who got cut or they gave
Sure.
up playing basketball. They weren't, they were never going to make it to the varsity.
Right.
And they play games down at the warehouse over here, which is close to my
Yes.
house.
Yep.
And they, it's actually grown so much.
Yes.
They play games on, I think, Sunday evenings and Wednesday evenings, and they fill up the warehouse.
Love it.
Other kids go watch them play.
Yeah.
A lot of their friends go watch them play. It's also where, because I'm big on having a boys practice team,
Okay.
and it's where I get my boys practice team. It's kids,
Oh.
they're juniors and seniors, and I usually kind of vet them a little bit, but they're good kids.
Sure.
I usually pick 6 or 7 of them, and we have them practice against our girls once a week or twice a week, depending on that. So.
Okay, I'm going to come back to that. I like this.
Okay.
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 So we've done team camp at Gonzaga before many times. We have a player that plays at Gonzaga right now, Kylie Griffin. She's been hurt the past 2 years, and hopefully she can get her shoulder right and help them out. But I know when we've played in the warehouse, prospective team camp, I've looked at those schedules of teams that are playing regularly on Sunday at the warehouse, and it is a gauntlet of teams and squads. I mean, that's amazing. Now, I was going to ask this next, but I want to ask about your practice players first. So we've really struggled with that idea. I've wanted to incorporate, male practice players, boy practice players. You said you mix in like 6 or 7. How long have you been incorporating that?
Well, it's been off and on, but I've had it probably for the last 6 or 7 years.
Okay.
What I do, love
really,
it.
Yeah.
Love it. Never had a bad experience with it. Again, because the 6 or 7 boys are handpicked.
Sure.
I go to the boys coach, Maddie McIntyre, boys coach, who's a great coach. And I say, hey, tell me about a couple kids that maybe seniors that maybe got cut or didn't turn out in his program. And so he'll give me a couple names and I'll go talk to those kids. And first of all, they love doing it. I get them a reversible. That's their only pay they get for it. And you know what? We bring them in early in the season. We'll bring them in a couple times a week, and then we usually bring them in like right before the day before a game.
Okay.
And they'll go down with my assistant coach and they'll watch film of the other team.
Okay.
And then they'll come upstairs and they'll run the offense of the other team.
Nice.
And so, not for long, maybe for 10 minutes or so. So our girls kind of understand where the screens are coming from and stuff. But where I find it best is we have them like early in the season, we have them press us a lot.
Okay. Yes.
And
the athleticism and all that kind of.
The boys are so much longer and faster and stronger than girls. And I'm not cutting girls anyway,
sure.
but they are.
Sure.
They're just, that way. And And it really helps in our press break situation when our
Love it.
girls have to understand not to throw over the top of a boy because they're going to tip it every time.
Yep.
They understand how to pass fake and how to find angles in the press break so that they can beat that speed.
Right.
The other thing I have them do a lot of is what we call transition, where the girls are on offense and they shoot and they have to get back and recover
Love
with
it.
these 5 boys flying at them.
Yeah.
Again, as fast up the court as they can and see if we can recover and match up and do the things we have to do. So there's a lot of benefits to it.
Love it. Yeah.
The boys have specific rules. They are allowed to check the girls,
Okay.
but they aren't allowed to ever take a charge. Because
Oh,
and the other thing that we tell the boys is if there's a loose ball on the floor, they're not to dive for it,
got it.
because that's when knees go out and
Sure.
stuff like that. Because the worst thing that can happen is a girl get hurt because a boy dove for a ball and went into the side of
Right.
her knee or
Yeah. No
something.
kidding. No kidding.
So, but they catch on to that stuff really quick, and I've had really good experience with it. And I've always found that it's helped our press break situation.
Yeah. Certainly.
It's really helped, like being able to get off a shot in close quarters
Sure.
situation,
Yep.
because boys are going to try and check you. And so
Yeah.
how to shot fake and then get the shot off, or to draw contact.
Yeah.
And I've been fortunate that, again, I've been able to like vet who I've had, and so I know the
Yeah.
boys. I've either had them in class or they're really good
Sure.
kids in our community, and so it's really been a good thing. And again, like I said, they usually only come like once a week. We don't have them there every time, and
Okay.
sometimes when they come, they're there for an hour and then they take off. They don't stay for the whole practice,
Okay.
but it's a really good situation. I really like it.
So nothing that you think discourages your development of your kids or your program or anything like that, and especially with the once a week, I don't think that's going to be an issue. In fact, honestly, you could probably work on rotations. If you've got the boys there and subbing certain kids in. Um, are they allowed to taunt if they block a shot?
Uh, well, they do, but the girls don't let them get away with the taunting too much. Like for instance, one of the boys this year, his girlfriend was our shooting
Oh
guard,
no!
and
Yeah.
so, but they'll, when one of the girls like does something against the boys, makes a move and
Yes.
takes him out of his,
Yes.
you get all the girls are like, ooh, and the other boys who are playing with him will do the same
Yes.
thing, like, oh, you just got burned.
For sure.
But
For sure.
the other thing that I've gotten, and it happens every year, is the boys will come up to me at some point and say, "Man, you guys, I don't think they have a perception of how good girls can be."
Agreed.
And
Agreed.
it's amazing that they see after they play against them a little bit, they say, "Wow, she's pretty good," or
Yeah.
"Wow." And the other thing I see is they're always in the stands. They're
Yep.
there watching our games.
Love it.
They're
No,
there
what a
watching our
great.
games. So
Okay, so you've committed me out. We're gonna make that happen this year. I love it.
yeah. All you need is about 6 or 7 of them, in
Yeah.
case
No, we have
1 or
that.
2 are gone. Yeah.
My son is a senior this year, and he played hoops growing up, and he was a soccer kid. Ran cross country and track was probably more his thing, but he missed playing hoops, and so this year, for fun, he wanted to play, and we have a little YMCA league here in Lake Stevens, just to go play and have fun. And as a coach, I went and watched him play or whatever, and we hear, oh, these guys could beat our high school varsity team, da da da. I'm like, and I've never seen these kids play, so I go and watch them play, and there's no way they could beat any of our varsity teams. It wouldn't happen. But the amount of fun that those kids have, it is incredible, in terms of just they appreciate the game for the game. And I never had more. I mean, I laughed literally the whole time, and not laughing at them, but laughing at the joy. You know, our kids, I think, as you mentioned earlier, get too caught up in the AAU stuff, and I've got to get a scholarship, and here's where I need to be at this certain level. And these kids were about the one and one move they had, or the long 3-point shot that they made. It was all that was about, and it was so refreshing for me as a coach to kind of. I
Yeah.
told my girls at practice, I think the first time after I watched him play a game, and he's a decent player. His teammates maybe not so much, but when I went to practice, I'm like, I appreciated them so much. The skill and how we practice and how we play. It's it makes you appreciate what you have as a coach, so much more. Um, to speak to your longevity, how much have you seen the girls' game grow and change?
A lot. It seemed like, I don't know, maybe it's just my memory isn't as good as it used to be because of, I don't know, I still have my hair, although I
Yeah,
got
not
a
me.
hair, I got a haircut Sunday for the
I
first
love it.
time
I
in
love it.
7. Um, it seemed like back in the late 80s, there was a jump ball every 1 minute.
Yes.
And girls weren't as skilled
Yep.
as they are today. And I find that the girls are coming to us with better skills,
Yep. No
with
question.
better ball skills, more understanding of some defensive things that we teach
Yep.
that we did back in the late 80s and stuff.
Sure.
I think the game has gotten more up and down
For
than
sure. Yep.
than it was in the 80s. Um, to me, um, it seemed like when I was coaching in the 80s and early 90s, everything was a set,
Yes.
and you were trying to get a shot for a player
Yep.
walking it up the court,
Yep.
as opposed to now it's more transition into flow, and that speaks because the girls have gotten better,
Right.
and they're better at handling the ball. They're better at finding those having the footwork
Right.
and having the vision,
Sure.
and so those things have gotten a lot better, I think. And obviously, I would say back in the 80s, I don't know if girls were playing in the fourth grade and third grade.
Right. Right.
Now they are, and so they're growing up with
Yep.
basketball,
Yep.
and that's only improved their skills. And so just better skills, I think. Uh,
Yeah.
the other thing too is there's more girls that are better.
Yeah.
Used to be in our league here of 10 teams, there used to be 2 or 3 teams that were good.
Right. Right.
Now almost every team.
Yeah.
Uh, we don't, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 teams in our league, we don't have a gimme on our
Yeah.
schedule.
For sure.
We have some tough teams, and we're a combined league. We're a 3A, 4A league, and
Yep.
then next year we're going to be a 2A, 3A, 4A league. We have
Yeah.
16 teams. We won't ever play the 2A schools, but it's all those schools have really good programs.
Yeah.
So,
We're going to actually be the same way next year in Wesco. We're going to be a 2A, 3A, 4A. Although I think on the girls' side, and I don't know if you've ever seen this in your day, the boys' side is going to be just the 2A, 3A, 4A combined, whatever. But on the girls' side, we as coaches came up with a competitive balance league. So 6 schools are going to have their own league, and those would be the teams that are just really kind of low end, would really struggle
mhm.
and need each other, to be honest. And then the other 14 teams are going to be essentially their own league, and it's going to be a mix. And so we have to come up with 6 non-conference. So we're actually giving it a try, next year. And I think there's a lot of positives in that respect for everybody. But it'll be interesting to see. We've done a 3A, 4A combo before. The 2A is just where they would have to go for all their non-conference games if they stayed to just exclusively a 2A is all over the place. So I think that's why we've kind of made that leap. You
Well,
talked.
we got the other way. We had 5. I'm sorry, 6.
Uh-huh.
No, 5. We had 5 4A teams and 4 3A teams.
Okay.
Now we're going to. There's only going to be 3 of us that are 4A in the Greater
Right.
Spokane League: Central Valley, ourselves, and Lewis and Clark. And Meade's dropping down to 3A, so there'll be a tough 3A.
Yes, for sure.
And U High is dropping down to 3A, and so University High School, and
Yep.
so there'll be a tough, along with Mount Spokane, who has a really good girls basketball program. So
Right.
the other thing, it always astounds me how good the basketball is over here in Spokane, the girls basketball.
That's where you're going to take me next. I was going
Okay.
right in that angle.
Okay, go ahead.
What is it about Eastern Washington hoops? I mean, I know, Hoop Fest is a huge thing, and hopefully, knock on wood, they're going to have it in September. I haven't heard anything different since they postponed it is all. But, I mean, year after year there, you guys are shooting for state titles. And, I saw something on social media this past season. How come we're overlooking, the Spokane schools? Where's, it just kind of seemed like a West side driven, state polls and so on and so forth. But why is, shoot, girls basketball? Why is girls basketball, women's basketball, Eastern Washington? And I looked at leagues last night, down to the Bs, all the way up to the 4As. Like you said, it's not just two teams now. It's up and down, everywhere in that area. How come how come you guys are so tough over there? What kind of makes up? Is it because so many people are playing? Is it a hoop fest thing? Is basketball the girls' kind of sport in Spokane or the Inland Empire? What do you think?
Well, it's got to be a lot of factors as I look at it over the years. I, I think, and again, like I said, we've had 5 4A schools in our league.
Right.
We combine with the Tri-Cities League when we do our regional tournament,
Yep.
and Chiawana is usually a power to be dealt with.
Yes, they are.
But I think if you just talk about Spokane itself and this area around here, which includes 2A schools and some smaller schools,
Yep.
I think probably the one, at least from the Greater Spokane League aspect, and I think, and I know some coaches would say, well, that can't be it. But I think one of the major factors is of my 20-game league schedule.
Yeah.
18 or 16 of the games are we go into the game not knowing whether we can win or not.
Single digit type affairs is what you're thinking. One way.
Competitive games.
Yeah.
I've back in the days of the 16-team tournament, I know some coaches want to go, I
miss those days.
When I remember going to the Kingdome in '97, and we were the number 2 seed out of Eastern Washington.
Right.
Kamiakin at that time was the number 1 seed.
Yep.
And we got 3 teams to that 16. And I can't remember, I think Central Valley was there as well.
Sure.
But I was watching the teams play and the 16 teams there, and I'm thinking, okay, that team probably couldn't get 5th in our league.
Right.
In our league.
Yes.
And I just, and I don't want to brag about that, but every time my girls step on the court, the outcome is in question.
Right.
They're tough games.
Right.
And I don't know if that's the case in all the leagues around the state, but that's the case here.
Yeah.
So I think our girls are battle tested
for sure
once they get to the regional level and the state level.
Right.
So that's why you see maybe a Spokane team getting far each time.
Right.
Because of that. I also think we have a great AAU program here.
Uh-huh.
A wonderful AAU program here that starts them early, and I think that helps.
Yep.
There are tremendous coaches in our league.
Love it.
All dedicated, loyal, and have great programs.
Yep.
And we kind of mirror off each other. We're all pretty good friends with each other, and so we share things as well.
Love it.
So that helps. And I just think, you combine and then you get good community support.
Yep.
Food Fest,
sure.
for instance, is another example of that.
Yep.
So when you combine all those factors, it maintains strong programs. And I can't think of, if you look at our original league of 10 schools,
mm-hmm.
they're all good programs.
Yeah, no question.
And so in that regard, I think if you put all those factors together, it leads to success. Like I always tell my parents, the toughest part of girls basketball is just getting out of our league.
Yeah.
If we could get out of our league, because you got Central Valley, Lewis and Clark, Meade, Ferris, U-High. If you can Mount Spokane, which is a 3A,
yep. Sure.
Just getting out of our league is an accomplishment in itself.
Yeah.
So
no, I totally get it. We dealt with it a little bit this year, combining with Kinko for our district playoffs, and Woodinville and Inglemore and Newport, who had the 6'7" kid, and it just felt like if you could find a way to get out of our tournament, our league not so much, but in terms of the playoffs, Eastlake with Keely Burton and so on and so forth, if you could find a way to get out of our district tournament, you felt like, okay, you could kind of take a breath and go compete and what have you. But historically, there's no question about it. GSL is annually brought it to the table. And I think you're exactly right. That combination of factors with the youth component, which, obviously you're starting them young, they're playing the game at a high level. all up and down the Inland Empire. You got your coaches that are committed, which you had mentioned, and it's going to be a huge thing. In your opinion, do you think girls basketball is number one for girls sports in that area? Has volleyball surpassed it? Because I think it has here.
The volleyball is important here as well. It used to be in the day when I first started coaching, I would say more than at least 50% of my girls played volleyball
Yeah.
and basketball.
Yep.
I didn't have one last year. Not one of my varsity players was a volleyball player.
Yeah.
Volleyball's become more year round, which is fine. They're starting to pick up as well. So girls aren't able to come out for basketball.
Sure.
I find, most of my better athletes, two sports athletes, come from my soccer program.
Yes.
Girls soccer is really good in Spokane.
Yes. Yeah.
Really good in Spokane. And then the other sport that's really good in Spokane is fast pitch softball.
Yeah.
Really good.
Love it. Man, really good stuff. So, we think about all those components in terms of what's, made your program, what's made teams in the GSL and the Spokane area successful are those components. You've got that youth element, you've got coaches that are committed to the game, you've got that parental support, you've got administration that's got your back, you've got kids that are willing to do the multi-sports, at least in Gonzaga Prep's case, and preferably in all of our cases, even though we have some of those sports that are starting to, as you mentioned with volleyball, we didn't have one either, unfortunately. So, but, it makes up what you guys are all about. And ultimately, I think why that area is so tough. We had Central Valley come over with the whole Twins 2 years ago for a little event with us, and we felt pretty good about ourselves. And of course, they're ranked number one at the time, but we were excited about the opportunity because we're like, okay, here's a situation where we can see them ahead of the state tournament, and let's give it our best shot. And this was down, Wilson High School, maybe something. We got invited to play Freddie and his crew. And their warm-up, their pregame warm-up overwhelmed our kids. Now, I haven't seen you guys warm up, so maybe you do the same. But how they went about warming up was overwhelming and intimidating. The pace and the speed at which they did things, how they did things for that 20 minutes, I think was the number one reason why we were down 25-4 after one. And again, we were a top 5 team 4A that year.
Yeah.
A couple D1 kids there. Now, granted, I do like to say, I will always bring this up. We're the last team to score 50 points on them that year. We did play them even the remaining 3 quarters, but we were done. Done. But it was impressive. And I've gotten some good rapport. I don't know if you remember playing Arlington and Joe. Joe was my guest last week.
Yeah. We played them when I had a good group. You probably know I had a good group come through, and they were freshmen 2013. 2012, that was their freshman year. We went to state and we placed 4th with them.
Yep.
I had 5 freshmen on that team.
Awesome.
And those freshmen, obviously, so then their sophomore year, we played Joe first round. Arlington, we played first round, and we lost by 3 to them. And Arlington ended up going to the state championship and lost to Meade. That
they
year.
got to the state tournament or championship at the expense of us in overtime. I don't like to bring that up.
Was that the semifinal then? It must have been. Yeah,
brutal.
We played them the first day and lost. And so that year we ended up winning the consolation. And then my girls, so that group, which had Audie Gilden, who played at Oregon, and had Laura Stockton, who played at GU.
Yep.
And, a third player there, Una Harrington, played at Carroll.
Okay.
And so, and then my 4th one, she was a soccer player.
Uh-huh.
She ended up actually taking a basketball scholarship. She was only a junior that year. She went to Simon Fraser.
Nice.
So I had 4 college players on that team. And so their junior year, we played somebody first game. I don't remember who it was, but then we played St. Mary's from Portland in a tournament.
Yes.
And we lost to them. And then they rattled off 50 in a row.
Oh my goodness.
We won the championship in 2014, and then we won the championship in 2015. And then we got invited back to New York City, and we played in the Dick's
Yes.
semifinals, and we lost to a team from Florida by 1. And but the the reason I bring that up is because there's been some great teams in Spokane history,
For
and
sure.
the Central Valley with the whole twins and Haley Christopher,
Yep.
who plays at Idaho, the great team,
Yes.
great
Yes.
team. And Meade's had some years where they had great
Yes.
teams, and Lewis and Clark when Brianne
Yep.
January played there,
Yep.
and Jimmy Redmond was their coach. Great teams,
Yes.
and
One of my favorite coaches.
yeah, Jimmy's a good friend of mine.
And he's coaching boys at LC now. Yeah.
He's the boys coach. This will
Okay.
be his 3rd year, I think, coaching boys.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
No,
good guy,
great stuff. Great
great
guy.
guy.
Great
Yeah,
guy. No, you had mentioned Laura Stockton. This was actually one of my points, and you probably get asked this all the time, but I think it's good for our listeners. You had a Hall of Famer on your staff, an NBA Hall of Famer on your staff.
for 7 years.
Yeah.
Then he quit on me. Dog.
Yeah, for sure. What's that like? Is there a little intimidation? You have a Hall of Famer who's on your staff that, one of the all-time greats, and you have his own kid. What's that experience like?
Not in the least. I guess you don't. Everybody's got to know John.
Sure.
John is a hometown boy.
Yeah.
He doesn't bring the air of any pro athlete. He
Right.
is Spokane homeboy to the core,
Yeah.
and it's kind of interesting. I tell this story all the time, and which is
Uh-huh.
almost every game. You know, all John is just John is the kid who grew up in the St. Al's neighborhood. That's all he is. He's just,
Yeah.
he's not the Hall of Famer. He's not the, everybody knows his accolades, but he's John.
Right.
Nobody bugs him. It's
Right.
just, he's just another parent in the crowd, or he's
Love
a
it.
person walking in the gym and so on. But it's hilarious when we travel, and we're playing in the Tacoma Dome. There's
Yes.
all these people standing behind our bench taking pictures
Right.
and wanting to get his attention, or maybe get an autograph from him, which he doesn't do, but get an autograph from him. It's, I don't think our girls understood, even when they had him as an assistant coach, I don't think they understood, exactly who he was.
Sure.
To them,
Sure.
God, to them, he was Laura's dad.
Sure.
That's all he was.
Yep.
He was Laura's dad who knew a lot about basketball.
Yeah.
And he was not the, you can't travel anywhere with him without it being
Right.
a circus a little bit. As when you go to have a team dinner at a restaurant in
Sure.
Tacoma,
Right.
it becomes a circus a little
Yeah.
bit. But John is the most unassuming. He loves basketball. He'll tell you straight up, face to face, is he doesn't do the X and O's, and he says whatever you do offensively will
Uh-huh.
work. It will
Nice.
work as long as you execute the fundamentals of it.
Right.
It will work. It doesn't matter
Sure.
what offense you have; they all work. He says, and so he liked to teach things like footwork
Yep.
and passing angles and
Yep.
vision.
Mm-hmm.
He was big on vision, and he liked to teach those things to our kids. And he was a tremendous, tremendous asset to have, because our girls learned the intricacies of the game,
Yes.
things that I probably didn't know how to teach them.
Sure.
And they learned the intricacies of the game,
Sure.
and they were very fortunate to have him. And it was not intimidating in the least.
Right. Love
His
it.
older daughter, Lindsay, who ended up playing at Montana State, her freshman year, John asked me, would it be okay if I come down right before halftime?
Okay.
And he always asks permission first. He doesn't want to assume anything. Would it be okay if I come down right before halftime and just talk about what I saw the first half before you go in and talk to the girls? And I said, yeah, that'd be great. Come on down. So he would do that.
Okay.
And then the second year, we were at Bellarmine Prep playing in a Jesuit tournament. We were
Yes.
Seattle Prep was there, Bellarmine Prep ourselves, and Jesuit from Portland was there.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And a little 4-team tournament. And we're traveling over there, and we were sitting in a restaurant, and he was traveling with his wife separately, but they happened to come to the same restaurant as the team was. And he was kind of complaining the way John can complain sometimes, but he was kind of complaining. He goes, I hate this because people want to come take pictures of me
Yeah.
and this and that. I said, well, I have a solution for that. He goes, what's that? I said, why don't you sit on the bench with us?
Yeah.
And that way they can't bother you. And he goes,
Nice.
oh, that's an interesting idea. So we did that tournament. He sat on the bench with us.
Uh-huh.
And then when we got back to Spokane, I politely asked him, would you like to help us?
Sure.
And he said, oh, I would love to. It'd be okay if I do that.
Awesome.
And so he literally was our assistant for 7 years, and he is a great man, a great
Yeah.
supporter of me, and very loyal to Gonzaga Prep and to Gonzaga U.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'll end like I started. He is a Spokane boy.
Love it. No, I love it. It's such a cool thing. And I think probably, and you mentioned this, what he appreciated the most is that he was, Laura's dad.
Yeah.
That's it. That's how they knew him, and for him, it was like, oh, okay. Yeah. That's what I am here, and no, that's fantastic. Such good stuff. Now, we obviously know that John was, one of the best all time to pass it and sling it. And we had you over here for a clinic for us back in 2014. And you did a little session on passing. And I think that's certainly one of the strengths in your program that, as we've watched game film and you guys, play, schools have been watching and what have you. And then when you came and spoke, it was so overwhelming because I think that's one of the skills in the game that tends to get overlooked the most. We all, of course, shoot it a ton. It seems like everywhere you look, there's a ball handling video or a clip. But we really, really don't spend a ton of time, or probably as much time as we should, on passing the basketball. Is that a massive emphasis in your program? And one thing I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, you kind of use this pencil analogy. You remember this angle of about, you don't want to stand tall to being like a pencil and eraser, something of that sort. Does that ring a bell?
Well, I say that every year. I tell the kids basketball's not played like a pencil.
Yeah. Okay.
You're to be in a low stance. And again, I think I think I'm a geometry teacher.
Okay. Angles.
And angles are huge to me.
Got you.
And we teach angles and passing, especially the perimeter to post passing. And
we all need work of that for sure. Yeah.
And we talk about angles and creating angles with two ways: creating angles with your feet in pivoting.
Sure. Got you.
Which was that was a big John thing too, is to be able to create angles by pivoting and creating a better angle to post pass.
Yep.
But angles passing is huge for us. We do a lot of, 3-man drills where we're just passing. We call it pass through, where we're just passing through hands.
Okay.
Being double teamed and being able to pass through or out of a double team.
Got
and
you.
Looking for angles that way. Looking to improve our angles by floor spacing.
Okay.
We talk about those things. It's interesting. I don't see myself as emphasizing passing way too much, although passing is one of our things that we want them to be, and being able to be a good passer is one of the things that we emphasize as part of our program.
Sure.
But we played in a tournament down in Phoenix this summer, or this winter, and I had after we got back, I had the very first team we played was from Mesa. It was Red Mountain High School in Mesa, and the coach sent me an email. He says, "Hey, I want to talk with you because I really was impressed by how well your girls space the floor and pass the ball to your post players."
Yeah.
And I said, you must really emphasize that. And I thought to myself, it's not like I preach that every day.
Sure.
But it is an important part of our program that we talk about angles and how to create angles.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think it helps me that I usually work with girls who are pretty smart.
Right.
And so it helps that they understand that we're trying to break down the game in these little small pieces.
Gotcha.
and create better angles for them. So to me, it's important. The passing aspect is important. Being able to deliver the ball to a shooter so that she can shoot it quickly.
Right.
And she doesn't have to catch it low, high, whatever. And so,
right.
When we do camps with little kids, We talk about, how coaches harp on being able to dribble with your left hand.
Yep.
You also have to be able to pass with your
Your
left hand.
left hand. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we talk about one hand push passes with our left hand,
Yep.
and those type things that are important to keep the ball away from the defender, to create that angle, to keep your hands out. You probably see my hands, to keep my hands out here
Yeah, sure.
to create that angle, as opposed to trying to pass it with your right hand. And
Right.
so,
Right.
so yeah, passing is a big deal. I don't know if I've ever done a ball handling drill in practice.
Interesting.
I,
Okay.
I you know, our point guards might be working with their coach, because we break it
Sure.
down by one of my assistants does point guards when we do individual improvement drills.
Gotcha.
One of my assistants does the wing players,
Yep.
and I usually take the posts.
Sure.
And we usually, every practice, we have what's called individual improvement,
Gotcha.
10 to 15 minutes, and each coach has to plan what they want to do.
Yep.
So one coach is working with the point guards, one's working with the wings, and I work with the post. And we do that every day,
Love it.
individual improvement. And I even do, I'm big on post to post passing too.
Interesting. Okay.
High, low.
Yep.
So how a post can create an angle to high, low bounce pass. And so the last comment I want to make in this, and I probably should have made this first, is I tell the girls that, believe it or not, the bounce pass is not illegal. If you read the rule book, the bounce pass is still allowed in basketball.
Okay.
And so many girls want to pass over the top.
Yeah.
And I tell them that basketball is played from the hip bones down.
Okay.
Most passes should be from your hip bones down. So here. And so we really try and emphasize the game being played on the lower 4 feet of the floor, as opposed to up by the rim.
Okay.
And so we really talk about, because that's where your feet are moving, and that's where
Right.
most passes are, as well as that bounce pass and so on. So we do emphasize passing, we do emphasize angles, we do emphasize vision. Is that our number one thing that we do? Probably not, but we do emphasize it.
But not a single ball handling drill.
Well, I know our point guards do ball handling drills, but I don't. Yeah, during summer we'll bring out the
Sure.
cones and we'll have them do
Sure.
ball handling drills. But during the year, I don't know if we don't do ball handling.
But if you think about it, I mean, if you're getting a coach that went out of his way to say, hey, man, you guys, certainly seem to create angles and your spacing, that's that priority. You can see where your program's kind of shaped what you guys are all about and how you have that success there.
Yeah.
My approach, and my kids would tell you, I can't stand the bounce pass. I think it's like a 1 out of 10 success rate, and more probably because we don't throw them correctly or at the right moment. Not that it isn't something you shouldn't use, and not that we don't, but I really discourage it just for the sake of, I just think we don't do it. They don't do it well enough, nor probably do we practice it enough with that angle kind of concept in mind, we get that television, that television's got to go here instead of creating that space right or left.
And you might take this into account, is I use the analogy, and a lot of even boys, when they throw a bounce pass, they throw it so hard that it bounces off the floor and it comes up into the chest area, which is where the defender can hit it.
Sure.
We want the ball caught down around the knees.
Okay.
So it's easy to make this analogy in Eastern Washington, because all of our girls have gone to the lake and they've skipped rocks.
Sure. Yeah.
And how you skip a rock off the lake and make it bounce 3 or 4 times.
Right.
That's kind of how we want them throwing bounce passes, is to skip it so it skips.
Gotcha.
And it comes up low and hard into the knee area or the thigh area.
Right.
And so we talk about that a lot. And we talk about using, put some English on the bounce pass,
sure,
so that we can make the ball.
Yeah.
And again, that creates better angles, especially
right.
when you're going baseline, to create that angle to make that bounce pass.
So you even go so far as some English on the ball if you have to create that spin to get in there.
Yeah, create the spin, that which creates a better angle to get it in there. So little things. I know I'm probably getting way off topic here, but
no, I love it. These are the kind of things, like I said, selfishly gets me to think about, I haven't thought about it from that perspective. And again, we're trying to get people to think outside of their comfort zones too. So really good stuff. If we were to come to one Gonzaga Prep practice at any juncture, is there something you can think of that you guys do, and maybe others do it, but is there one thing that you guys do at practice that you feel like you do that you're really proud of, that you think kind of shapes what your program's about? Is
At
there
practice, huh?
yeah, like a practice, is there something that you prioritize, something that you do daily that you really feel like kind of embodies what your program's all about? And I guess it doesn't have to be basketball related. I mean, it could be maybe a team thing that you guys do, something that people would identify with. Oh, that's what Gonzaga Prep's all about. Anything you can think of?
Yeah, that's well. Our practices, I hope, are very efficient. I've been told that when people come and watch them. But we have what we call daily emphasis, and let's see if I can list them here. Let's see how good I am. We always rebounding is always a daily emphasis.
Okay.
Shooting is always a daily emphasis. Passing is always a daily emphasis. Transition is always a daily emphasis.
Okay.
So those four aspects, and I can't think of the fifth one right now. Shooting. Did I say shooting?
You did. So you're going to see those every practice
Every
from day one till you're done?
Yeah. Yep. Everything in there. And so those are all daily emphasis for us, is the idea. So every practice will have a 10-minute, we just call it fundamentals in our practice plan.
Sure.
Where we'll do 2-on-2 post passing.
Okay.
And we're just looking to create angles, and our posts are looking to seal and get position. And so we'll do something like that. We'll do high-low passing one day. We'll do point-to-wing passing leads. Leads are really important.
Yeah.
Just how to get the ball to your wing where your wing player can be effective.
Well, and especially if you're a transition team and want to get out and go, you got to have that for sure.
So, we do. So passing, rebounding, we always have a coach whenever we're doing 5-on-5. We always have a coach whose job it is to watch the defense. And if one girl doesn't box out, then something has to, like push-ups or something.
Sure.
So,
okay.
Or we'll give them a warning the first time, and so.
Sure.
So, but those, we call them daily emphasis stuff, and they're actually listed on our practice plan, that those 5 things will be covered every practice.
Gotcha.
One aspect of it.
Gotcha.
So maybe that, but I think probably to answer your question more specifically, I would say a coach would say, boy, they're really efficient.
Okay.
We have 10 basketball teams at Gonzaga Prep and 2 gyms.
Wow.
And so you have to get on and off in your time frame.
Sure.
And usually that time frame's an hour and 45 minutes. And so we have to be efficient when we're on the floor, because we need to get things done. So that kind of forces our hand a little bit to be efficient. Now, if I would encourage any young coach, the one thing you don't want, and the other thing you would see, I don't do a lot of talking during practice. I mean, I'll correct in here, and my coaches are correcting in here, but the girls are constantly moving. And sometimes we're correcting while they're in line or waiting for their next turn to get on the floor.
Right.
And so we want to make sure that, and I'm not a big conditioning guy. I don't do a lot of running at the end. I would encourage the girls know when they run at the end that something is wrong.
Sure.
That we didn't practice very hard. We weren't running very hard during the drills or during our transition stuff. And I think the best the best conditioning you get, other than weightlifting that a lot of our girls do, the best conditioning that you get is while they're doing drills and while they're doing transitions. So, I used to be a hard ass back when I was younger, and I used to run lines, and we'd do suicides, and we'd do these and that. I don't do those anymore.
No.
I unless they're in trouble, that's the only time that those things ever come out of the hat. And so I would encourage coaches to use their drills to get their conditioning in. So.
Yeah, no, a big proponent of that. If we're running, it's for, like you said, it's for a reason that something in practice didn't go well or as planned. Now, you said you had mentioned you don't chat much. Are your assistants maybe kind of setting up the next drill, or do you set up the drill and then just kind of have it be? I mean, what is that?
Well, we have, so like each assistant is assigned an area. So one of my assistants does our swing offense.
Okay, gotcha.
And while he's doing swing offense, I'll be talking about defense. So if we're ever doing 5-on-5, if we're doing 2-on-2 pick and roll stuff, or blocker lifter type stuff. I'm
Yeah.
doing the defense. He's doing the offense. And
Gotcha.
our third coach will be watching for rebounds. The other assistant coach we run flex.
Yep.
Well, he'll do flex offense. I do the zone offense.
Okay.
So my coaches, that's another thing I would encourage, because I've been an assistant and I felt always uncomfortable just standing there, not doing anything,
Yes.
and maybe being a cheerleader, which we all should be cheerleaders. But I make my coaches do stuff.
Yeah. Give them some value.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so JT runs our swing offense. He makes all the adjustments in it, even during games. Clyde does our flex offense. I do all our zone offense. JT does our presses. I do press break. We each have our own areas of responsibility. And during the game, I'm the coach, but they can make suggestions about adjustments.
Sure.
So like if we're working on swing offense and we have 20 minutes to work on it, JT plans that.
Yeah.
And he tells me what we're going to do that day.
Gotcha.
And then I run the defense. So we have a coach on the defense, a coach on the offense, and then usually our third coach is doing something like watching to make sure we box out.
Right.
Like that's another hint I would give to young coaches is give your assistants responsibilities.
Love it.
And
now, what I find interesting too, sorry to cut you off. It's not like your offense, their defense. You guys kind of actually go a little bit all over. You know, there's a little bit of offense here, defense that for that person, press breaks here. Is that more just a kind of a feel, or is that like a strength to, what your strengths are, to what your coach's strengths are, that kind of thing? Or is it just kind of happen?
No, it just happens. We'll switch up.
Sure.
Maybe JT will do the zone offense or the offense next year, and I'll do the swing offense.
Okay.
I just think it's first of all, some of my basketball girls I have in class.
Yes.
And she's not here, so she's not going to hear this. So it's just like being around your wife for 24 hours a day, right? She doesn't want to hear you for 24 hours a day.
Yeah, it's true.
And so some of my girls I have in class, so they hear me for 45 minutes there. And then all of a sudden I have them on the court for 2 hours, or we have a pregame. We're down in our team room. We're our pre-practice meeting, and then we'll go upstairs, and I'll run the pre-practice meeting, and then we go upstairs, and they don't want to hear me for 2 hours.
Yes. Agreed. Yeah.
But they do know that, what my assistants are teaching them, I agree with too.
Right.
And so I just think it's better for the girls if they're hearing different voices.
Yeah.
And it just creates a better practice atmosphere, and it makes the practices go faster.
Agreed.
And I think the girls feel it makes the practice go faster.
No, and I think that's so important. Something that I've found as I've gotten a little bit older, I think early on, we probably all make this mistake as young coaches. You feel like you have to be on all the time.
See, I did that. I don't know if it was arrogance or whatever. I thought I was the only one that could teach them. I was the only one that, and that's not true.
No.
And my assistants are very valuable to me. And I think it's important that they have, and they feel important too, because exactly. So, and then when something goes wrong in a game, it gives me someone to blame too.
Sure. No, exactly right. No, and I think the reality for me on that too was, I think there was a year, because I've always had like 6 period prep, which is, the last class period before school gets out, and it gives you a chance to decompress and then kind of get yourself geared back up for practice. And there was a year early on where I couldn't have that prep period. I think it was like 2nd period. But what I found was I'd go from school 6th period, and then you have to hustle over to practice, and then trying to be on for another 2 hours. I mean, I was exhausted.
Yeah.
Exhausted.
Exactly.
And so I figured out, kind of just square in the forehead, I can't do that. I need to give my assistants something to do at the start, just so it gives me like 20 minutes at least. And it's their thing, like we had she's at Inglemore now, Christina Schumacher, where she did like the dynamic stretching and conditioning or whatever that may have looked like at the beginning. And man, it was a godsend. It was just one of those things that, okay. And I can kind of check in with individual players, and of course we have kids in our classes. They don't want to hear you it's so true. It's so true. And it gives that, and maybe to some degree, it gives what you have to say when you have to say it as a coach that much more value.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So yeah, no, really, really important.
JT, he's a retired teacher and still coaching, and uh, he comes in the afternoons, and boy, I love this because
Yeah.
he'll take our films. He'll go into our office. He'll take our films and he'll clip them
Sure.
and get them ready.
Yep. Love it.
You kidding me? I don't have to
Yeah.
do that stuff
Yeah. No
because
kidding.
I'm not a big film guy anyway, but it's wonderful that he can take a game, break it into 10 clips, which is 3 minutes long, and the girls
Yes.
can go through those, not
Yes.
having to watch the whole game and just watch the clips.
Right.
He did all that for me last year. I can't
Oh.
tell you how much that took off my plate. So
Now, are you guys a huddle program?
yes,
Do you do huddle assist?
we did 2 years ago, but we didn't last year because JT was able to come in and
Just
break
do
it
that
down.
for you.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, no, such an invaluable resource. There's no doubt about it. Well, hey, I just have one more question for you.
Okay.
This has been great. I certainly appreciate your time. Certainly some eye-opening stuff for me, which is always great. I love the stories. It's comforting to feel that coaches go through a lot of those same battles, and yet we have a lot of the same types of ideas and philosophies that, with regards to practice and how you go about kids and how we incorporate coaches and the value of all the components that make you successful and what's made you successful as a coach. And, here we are approaching well over 800 games, which is, an astronomical number, but a credit to you and your passion for the game, and certainly the girls' game, which I think, is impressive in its own right. That said, 800 games. Are there things that have really attached you to the girls' game? And at the same time, um, is there something that, if you could share with young coaches that you learned early on, that you would have changed or have changed as you've gone through, these 30 plus years?
That one's kind of an easy one for me. Um, and I want my main goal is to make the girls' game as important as the boys' game
Love it.
and give them the sense of importance that they hold compared to the boys.
Love it.
We have a really good boys program, and but make it important for them. Give them experiences that they will never experience anywhere else.
Yes.
We've gone to Phoenix for a tournament. We went to Portland 2 years ago for a tournament. Create those experiences that go beyond the aspect of playing on a team, where
Right.
they can have those great experiences that they'll talk about. I think that's important. Get them the best equipment. Get them, all of the stuff. Make what you're doing important.
Yes. Love it.
And that is, to me, I think the value that they see, that they see themselves as important, they see themselves as valued, and in that regard, they'll have a great experience, because that's really what it's all about.
Yes.
If they come to their 20-year reunion and you ask them what their record was, unless they were undefeated, and I've had a couple of those, but unless they were undefeated, not a one of those girls are going to be able to remember, were we 14-10 or were we 15-9?
Yep.
But they will remember the experience they had.
Yep.
So make the experience important. And I'm not just talking varsity. Make it important for your C squad as well.
Love it. Yeah.
Buy them the best uniforms. Make sure your varsity kids go to their games. Make sure you go to their games.
Yeah.
And so that if you make it important for them, they'll remember that, and it'll be a good experience for them.
Love it. No, I think that's such a critical thing. And, ultimately, I think what high school sports should be all about. We get sometimes caught too much in the win-loss, and we've sacrificed the experiences that these kids, that you want these kids to have. And when you coach it long enough, I think you realize the importance of how significant the experience is. And granted, winning games and having success is going to be a part of that, but it's not necessarily always going to be that component. And if you prioritize the experience first, then the success will follow soon thereafter, or follow along concurrently with it, as
Exactly.
as it has in your case. So, man, this is just fantastic stuff.
I'm glad we did this, Randy. It was great.
Yeah, I really appreciate just your time and catching up. And um, to look ahead a couple years down the road, not necessarily next season, but I would say 2 years from now, we're coming over. So let's work on a game somehow.
Okay.
Let's get a non-conference game on our
Okay.
schedule, and we'll bridge that gap and see how we can stack up with another tough GSL squad.
Sounds good. I would enjoy that. Thanks, Randy.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Okay. Okay.